Hey there everybody, Travis Bowman here. I'm a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd. Welcome to a new YouTube series called Crazy Cool Controllers, where we take some of history's craziest and coolest controllers and do a video about it. We're going to do a brief overview as well as talk about some history, and at the end of the day we're going to rate this controller based on how crazy and how cool it is and how it functions as a controller. Now, as a big Dreamcast fan, it's a no-brainer that we have to do the Dreamcast Green Goblin as our first video on Crazy Cool Controllers. This controller has a legacy of its own. It is such a wonderfully celebrated arcade stick, not just for the Sega Dreamcast, but in general. So I think Sega really kind of surprised everyone with the launch of the Dreamcast when they revealed the controller being a 4-button instead of the natural 6-button that we grew to know and love from Sega. I mean, the Sega Saturn controller was pretty much perfect in every regard, but, you know, 3D happened, and so they felt that they needed to change it up a bit. This is really the first time that we've seen a diamond configuration from Sega, and it left a lot of us hardcore Sega fans wanting something else, myself included. So Sega launched the Dreamcast with this Green Goblin arcade stick right here, which is kind of crazy. I did not realize that myself, that this launched with the system. I always thought that this came much later, but no. Apparently day one, you could go into a store, buy a Sega Dreamcast and an arcade stick and take that sucker home, which was just mind-blowing to learn, to be honest. Now, there's a few different models for your arcade stick on your Sega Dreamcast. Mostly you'll just see the ones that have the logo with the word Dreamcast right here, and sometimes that'll just be replaced with a larger version of the logo. But either one is a fantastic option if you're trying to play some 2D fighting games on your Sega Dreamcast. But that's not all this is good for, and we'll jump into that a little bit later in this video. However, one of the coolest things about this controller is not just the fact that we've got the 6 face buttons and we've got a ton of room, ton of real estate for guys with big hands like myself, but in classic Sega Dreamcast fashion, you have a slot on this controller just like you do on the stock controller for your VMU, your memory card. They didn't want to leave you without an option. If you wanted to have a memory card in this sucker, now you've got one right there. It fits in just nice, and while you're playing, you can see whatever that VMU is going to be displaying as you're playing your game. Honestly, how cool is this that we even got such a thing? You know, it's so easy to take for granted how good we had it back in the day, man. Yeah, there are arcade sticks now for your PlayStation and your Xbox and stuff like that, but it's just different, man. I mean, the branding that went with this is for the Sega Dreamcast, and you know that it is. You know what I mean? You can take an arcade stick and use it on your PlayStation 5, but you can also use it on your PC and maybe even your Xbox, depending on whether or not it's compatible. But this is just hardcore Sega hardware, and that's what I love about it so much, is that they gave us the Sega Dreamcast, they gave us a ton of great games, both 2D and 3D, and they gave us several different crazy ways to play those games. Not just the stock controller, but there are so many crazy controllers for the Sega Dreamcast, and this is definitely one of them. So you might have noticed that there's something off about my particular arcade stick. It's pretty much stock except for the bat top right here. Now, this normally comes with a green ball top that matches the rest of the controller as far as the buttons go. The reason that I don't have it on there is because my hands are freakishly big and I'm a bat top guy, you know? Pretty much every arcade stick comes stock with the ball top, you know, give or take depending on which stick we're talking about. But I've always preferred the bat top because it's better for my hands. It just feels better in my hands. And you can see that I got a third-party replacement for this bat top right here. It doesn't quite match the green as much as I would like it to. I don't know, maybe I can find a replacement that actually matches that specific style of green. I would actually really like to do that. But for now, other than it being slightly aesthetically not perfect, the functionality is there, and it's great for me, and I really do enjoy it. So the controls are actually really simple. On the Dreamcast, you've got A, B, X, and Y, and then you have your 2 triggers. Now, the same thing is pretty much emulated here on this arcade stick. You've got A, B, X, and Y, that diamond configuration, just like you normally would. But then you've got the Z and the C buttons. Those are going to be your triggers that have been mapped to buttons. So there's not a lot of craziness going on there as far as the controls are concerned. They're pretty much the same sort of situation. It's not like you have to get a game that's specifically designed for this arcade stick. However, there is a compatibility list that I will share in the description below if you want to check out which games are going to be best for this arcade stick. And spoiler alert, there's quite a few of them, man. There's a lot of great games that you can use on the Dreamcast with this arcade stick. So other than the 6 face buttons, the stick, and the VMU slot, the only thing left to talk about is the teeny tiny little start button up here. There's not much to say about it. It's really kind of up here doing its own thing. It's really nice and flush with the rest of the controller here. You just have to press the start button occasionally, and it's really nice and small, out of the way. There's no way you're going to hit it accidentally. This is a freaking awesome design. It's a really thick boy too. It's pretty thick, and it's really nice and robust. Got a metal underside there, really, really nice. When you stick this on the table right here, it's got these rubber feet, these rubberized feet down here, so it's not going anywhere. You can sit here and play for a very, very long time. You don't have to feel like this is a cheap piece of crap. That's definitely not what this is. You know, this is one of the best arcade sticks I think I've ever used for a home console, and it's legendary at this point. There's all sorts of people that are really crazy about these arcade sticks. They've done modifications and they've cleaned it up a little bit, which brings me to the negatives. Admittedly, there's got to be something wrong with this guy after almost 30 years, you know, and it's the buttons. They're not the best quality, and they occasionally will stick every now and again, which really kind of sucks. That can really, you know, destroy an experience if you're really trying to have fun with this thing. If the buttons aren't registering when you're trying to press them, that can be absolutely infuriating, and I wouldn't blame you if you got upset about that. But there are ways that we can fix this. You can do something as simple as taking some contact cleaner and spraying into the groove just a little bit to knock some crap loose in there, you know what I mean? Or if that's not enough for you, if you really want to take it apart, you actually can. Taking this thing apart is extremely easy. It's really accessible, and there's a ton of room in there. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws on the back, and you have access to everything inside there. Now, some people have taken it upon themselves to really mod the crap out of this thing with new Sanwa buttons and a new Sanwa JLF, you know, joystick, which you can do if you want. And there are guides out there to help you map everything out to make sure that you don't completely screw it up. I don't know if I would want to do that, to be honest, because my arcade stick is still in really good condition. It's still working just fine. Occasionally, I'll have some stickage with the buttons, but it's nothing to write home about. I don't think this is going to prevent me from winning in a fighting game. I didn't have this arcade stick back in the day. Like I said, I did not realize that it was available at launch, which is crazy because I was a Dreamcast kid back then, man. I loved my Sega Dreamcast, and I still do. Which leads me to my next point. Let's talk about the games, man. The games make this arcade stick what it is, and there is a plethora of 2D and 3D games that utilize this stick very well. However, it's important to note that this stick is always mapped to the directional pad. There's no button configuration on here or switch to make it think that you're using an actual joystick like on the controller. This is always going to be a D-pad situation, and you know, for most fighting games and shooters, that's not an issue at all, so it shouldn't be an issue for you. But I just want to let you guys know that going forward, that that's how this arcade stick is. You can't magically just turn this into a joystick. It's actually mapped to the D-pad, so keep that in mind. So unfortunately, no Phantasy Star Online with this guy because you need both. You need the stick to move your character around, and you need the D-pad to go through your menus, which is very, very important for a game like that. So without further ado, let's jump into some games that I think are a must-play if you own the Sega Dreamcast Green Goblin. Let's do it.
There's absolutely no way that we could do an arcade stick video without including Soul Calibur. This is one of the best fighting games ever made, in my opinion, and on the Dreamcast, it is amazing. It's still such a responsive game, really nice and fluid, ton of different characters to choose from. This is one of the best fighting games on the system, and it's one of the prettiest games on the system as well. If you're unaware, Soul Calibur is one of those fighting games that includes a dedicated block button. In this case, it's going to be the A button. X is your horizontal attack, and Y is your vertical attack, and then your B button is kick, and that's pretty much it. This is one of those games that I pull down from the shelf and play all the time, whether or not I use the arcade stick or not, but to be honest, this is definitely one of those games that you buy the arcade stick for, and it's probably better to use the arcade stick than the standard Dreamcast controller anyway. If you're even mildly interested in getting a Dreamcast arcade stick, then this game pretty much has to come with it.
Versus Nightmare. Battle 1, fight!
I remember convincing my mom to let me open up my Sega Dreamcast a little bit before Christmas just to quote-unquote make sure that everything works. And with that Dreamcast came a demo disc. There were several games on that disc, but the one that I remember the most is Dead or Alive 2. I never could have imagined a game looking this good at that particular time, and even today, it still looks great. Yeah, the story's just a little bit ridiculous, but do you really play a fighting game for a story? Most people would say no. Dead or Alive 2 pretty much goes hand in hand with this arcade stick. It's pretty much the same thing as Soul Calibur, only now that block button can be used to do counters. So if you press back and block at the same time, at the correct time, you can counter one of your opponent's moves and do a counter attack of your own. It's a really, really interesting mechanic, very difficult to do, but still, it's one of the things that makes this game one of the greatest fighting games on the system. What you're seeing right now is just the standard Dead or Alive 2 game. However, a lot of modifications have been added to this game by various modders over the years to make it even prettier than it looks now, if you can believe that. My buddies still come over from time to time and we'll play a bunch of fighting games, and this is definitely one of them. There's a tag team versus mode in this game that's hours and hours of fun. A long time ago, my buddy Chance and I ended up playing this game for hours and hours and hours all night long, and we learned all of the moves, we learned all of the team-up moves. It was a really, really good experience, and I cannot recommend this game enough. Dead or Alive 2 is a must-play, especially if you've got the Dreamcast Green Goblin arcade stick.
Get ready, fire!
Street Fighter Alpha 3 is my favorite Street Fighter game and likely one of the best ones ever made, and I seriously doubt that anything will ever top this one. It's just got so much bang for your buck and so much Street Fighter in one Street Fighter game. There's a ton of different characters with all sorts of different varieties and movesets. There's hours and hours and hours upon gameplay here, and it's one of those games that you just think about once you put it down. I always hated trying to play this game on a Super Nintendo with shoulder buttons. This is a Street Fighter game, and it needs a proper 6-button controller to really take advantage of it, and I really feel that this arcade stick is one of the best ways to play this game.
Nobody blame. Triumph or die.
Shoryuken! Hadouken! 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 Hadouken!
Dynamite Cop is one of those weird games that makes the Dreamcast what it is. We have to admit that despite the fact there's a lot of great games on the Sega Dreamcast, there's a lot of weird stuff too, and I really feel that Dynamite Cop really fits that weird category. I've covered this game in a video before, but I couldn't leave it out of this one. This is an arcade game, and it makes sense to use an arcade stick with an arcade game, and this one plays extremely well with the Dreamcast Green Goblin. My buddy Brian came over while I was capturing footage for this video, so I put him in front of the arcade stick and had him try out Dynamite Cop. He's never played this game before, and he's never used the arcade stick before, but you can tell by this footage that he's having a blast.
Yeah, if a cruise is like this, I'd go on one.
This is actually a really short game, and you can beat it in about 30 minutes, which isn't really that bad. It's a great game to pull down from the shelf when you want to do some arcade stick stuff with your Sega Dreamcast, and I highly recommend this one because it's not a fighting game, it's a beat 'em up.
Hurry up with that ball! And where is that girl?
Ain't no way no dude's 80 years old and has that much muscle. Unrealistic. Like my third and a half time ever playing Dreamcast.
Oh my god.
Even though I own one.
Let's take a break from some fighting games and talk about this shooter right here. Cannon Spike. This is one of the weirdest Sega Dreamcast games, and very likely one of the most desirable Dreamcast games out there. It fetches a lot of money these days. Is it worth the $300 to $400 on eBay these days? Probably not. If you can manage to get your hands on it, or play it on the Dreamcast GDEMU, then I would say it's absolutely worth your time. This is a shooter that involves a lot of different Capcom characters, including Cammy. You've got Arthur from the Ghouls and Ghosts series, as well as a few others that I won't completely spoil for you here. I don't know if it's just me, or if I just suck at this game, but it's extremely difficult. I put it on the child setting because I just wanted to get far enough to get some interesting footage of this whole game for you guys. When I first started playing this game, I didn't realize that it wasn't properly configured for the Dreamcast arcade stick, so I went into the options after I noticed that I was missing a bunch of different moves that I knew I was supposed to have. So when you go into the options with that Dreamcast arcade stick, you're going to have to configure it the way that you like it because you're missing a lot of moves that you probably will need to beat the game. This is just a very, very small drop in the bucket of Dreamcast arcade stick compatible games, and I know I missed somebody's favorite game out there, so be sure to let me know in the comment section below which is the best game to use with the Dreamcast Green Goblin arcade stick.
All right, so we've checked out the controller, we've checked out some of the games that I recommend that you try with this controller, so let's do some rating. What do we think about this? Or what do I think about it? Well, we've got 3 topics here. How crazy is this controller? How cool is this controller? And how does it function as a controller? Well, as far as the crazy factor, honestly, it's really not that crazy. If anything, we should be constantly getting stuff like this for all of our video game systems, all of our home systems, but not every system had a cool arcade stick. Some systems did have arcade sticks that sucked. I mean, that's just the fact of life, but really, Sega hit it out of the park with this one. This is exactly what we needed at the time. At that specific time in history with the games that were presented to us, this was the perfect tool to use for those games. So I don't think it's that crazy at all. I'll give it a 2 as far as it being crazy, 2 out of 10. Now, as far as it being cool, I might be a little biased here, but I've got to say that this is 10 out of 10 cool. This is such a cool arcade stick, man, and it's so cool that we got this for our Sega Dreamcast because I think the Dreamcast was one of the last consoles that really tried to push that arcadey feel at home. You know, that's what the Sega Genesis was all about back in the day too, taking arcade ports and letting you have them at home without being super expensive like, say, the Neo Geo was. And I think this was Sega's last effort to give us that experience at home, and this is such a prime example of that. Now I'm going to do more episodes on this with other Sega controllers as well so we can take an even deeper dive, but as far as this being cool, it doesn't get any cooler than that, my friends. There are so many great 2D games and 3D games that benefit from such a controller like this. And like I said, I'm a bit biased, but this is 10 out of 10 cool. Absolutely. Now let's talk about the Green Goblin as far as the functionality of it being a controller goes. Is it a good controller? Does it still hold up today? Well, like I said, sometimes the buttons tend to stick, but these are built like tanks, man. We've got this metal plate on top, metal plate on bottom, plastic that's really, really nice and robust, that's still on the inside. When you look at it, it's not that brittle, man. Some of these can wear down over time due to sun damage and, you know, all sorts of other elements and stuff like that, but for the most part, these are built to last, and I am still using this controller all these years later with minimal modification on my part. You know, like I said, I've had some sticking every now and again, but that's easily fixed, and I added a new bat top to this just for my own comfort reasons. Other than that, this is still the same bad boy it was all those years ago, and that's why I don't want to change it. That's why I don't want to modify it, because it's still such a great controller. So for the value of this controller, I've got to give it an 8 out of 10. It is a really stellar arcade stick, and I think it's one of the best ones ever made for a home video game console. Well, thank you guys so very, very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this new topic of crazy cool controllers. What do you guys think about it? Which controller should I cover next? Have you ever used the Dreamcast Green Goblin? If not, what's keeping you from it? If you have, what are your favorite games to play with the Dreamcast Green Goblin? Let me know the answers to all those questions in the comments below. I really appreciate you guys subscribing to my channel. I've got a lot more videos like this coming out soon, and I got a playlist in the description below if you want to check out some more videos right now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys at the next video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Do you want to play? Give me that. Give me that paw. Give me that. Give me that paw.